Ron,
All right.
welcome, man. How's it going?
Good to be here.
Absolutely. So, we just caught you at the back end of a crushing bracelet sale. So, congrats.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know about I wasn't doing much. I was working on my computer. So, yeah, no, they were in Eden Prairie at the pastor's house
Okay.
for Grace Church in Eden Prairie. And, I don't know exactly because we haven't gone over the numbers. But, yeah, I mean, I know the missions group gave $1,000. And then from cash, probably a couple $100 there. Could be more. I don't know. So it could be, $2,200. But in my mind, quick, probably $1,800.
Sweet.
So, yeah, not bad.
Congrats, man. So that is what is it, Kamryn and Friends bracelet bunch?
Yeah, basically. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's the Bracelet bunch, but yeah, I mean, when we started, it was Kamryn and Friends, and so then it kind of, one of the girls came up with the Bracelet bunch, and kind of sticking with that, and that's where we're at right now.
Cool. And who is Kamryn exactly? Sorry, I don't know.
So Kamryn's my daughter, my 9-year-old daughter, and her friends in the neighborhood all have been quarantined together. So
this is recent then.
Yeah, they were quarantined together, and so just tried to figure out something when the riots happened with George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were just thinking of making money. My wife suggested sell the bracelets, for and give the money away, and so the kids didn't hesitate to say, sure, let's do it. And when I went on KFAN that Sunday and just made a mention of it, hey, we're gonna be selling bracelets and giving the money to charity. We had a guy right away, which that guy still, I have no idea what happened to that guy. He still hasn't, which I'm going to text him today. He still hasn't given us the money. He said he was going to be the first person. He was like, I'll donate $500.
It was a caller jumping in?
Yeah, a guy called into the radio and said, hey, I'll donate $500. So I said, hey, okay, cool. Here's my address. You can come meet us out here. Guy never showed up. But then other real people that actually exists did actually, Richard Pitino, Lindsey Whalen,
Nice.
Chad Greenway, all those guys,
Mhm.
Spice Adams, started donating money, and they were tweeting about it, which kind of got the awareness out there. And after the first like 2 or 3 days, we were up to like $8,000, and more and more, Adam Thielen, and then Harrison Smith drove out to our house, and it kept growing and growing and growing. And Good Morning America called us, and they wanted to come out, and then Little Caesars gave us $10,000, and at that point we were right around, I think, 40,000, and that was after the first week.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
And
God.
then fast forwarded, a couple weeks into that, and then we were at 100-something grand, and we thought we were done. We're like, all right, that's a good go. Let's give the money away, and so we donated some of the money to a church in Minneapolis. We donated some to Rongo's Auto Shop, which is in Minneapolis as well. His shop got burned down, and he said he needed $50,000 to get going, so we donated some money to him. And then it just kept going though. So then ESPN Sports Center, we were on there for twice, and I did the radio show for ESPN, and went on Fox News, went on CNN, went on nightly news, and all that. And so after that, it just kept going. And so at this point, we're at right around 130-ish, $140,000.
Wow.
And we did plan, we're going to do a race walk for kids. So call it the Kids Run for Justice, or Kids Justice Run, out in Chanhassen at the park on August 29th. And so Caribou is talking about they're going to come out and sell coffee and drinks that morning of the run, and all that money is going to go back to charity as well. Jimmy John's is going to come out and donate sandwiches that day. And we're deciding on what else, but somebody is bringing a bouncy house, and it's at a park, so there'll be stuff kids can just play at the park.
Mhm.
After the run's over. There's a shed, there's a volleyball court, there's a basketball court. So I'm working on something with that with some of the young boys to maybe do some kind of basketball challenge or something for kids. Or I don't know what exactly yet, but we're going to use the basketball court somehow to tie that in. We're going to do maybe some drills out there as well with cones for kids, some football type stuff. And we're Anthony Barr must have signed a jersey from UCLA. So a guy donated that. So now we're raffling that off, the jersey from him. CJ Ham signed a helmet. Tony Dungy signed a football that, CJ Ham signed as well. And then, my next step is to use the Vikings people I know that have already been involved, Chad Greenway and all this stuff. And we're going to try to raffle off every week, once football season starts, a jersey from these guys, from the people that buy the Loci. So we've partnered with Loci as well. This is not the bracelet, but we have a bracelet coming out like in the next 4 weeks with Loci, but we're going to take on the business side of it. So we don't want Loci to have to worry about distributing it. because when they do it, they only donate $1. We want to be able to give more back. So with our bracelet, same deals on Lokai site, $20, but it lasts a lot longer. Has the water from the Himalayas and or Mount Everest, and then the mud from the Dead Sea. So 2 parts of the world, highest and lowest points of the world type deal. But that money is going to go back to Minneapolis as well with some of the businesses. And, my early goal is to try to sell 1,000 bracelets. I'm like, we can sell 1,000 bracelets. That'll be, it's $20,000, but then, paying back the cost and all that stuff. The goal is still to put back, what is it, 9,4, so like $13 is going to go back. So that could be $13 more $1,000 back to the charity just through these bracelets that have a longer lasting impression. And we're going to have a card in there that's going to have a note that says, I was impacted or something like by George Floyd's, and then it'll have lines, and people should be able to write in that, put it on the refrigerator, safety pin it to their wall, and then that's a memory that, one, they bought the bracelet, so that ties them in with other people that bought it, but then also has a reason. And so then what we're going to do is create a hashtag, so when people, after they fill that out, I'll hope that they can tweet or Facebook using the hashtag from the Lokai bracelet that we come up with, that they can then tweet as well, like, this is my hashtag whatever. And so then I want to be able to see those hashtags and see all the stuff, the stories. And, I was impacted by this, or my store burned down, or, I bought a bracelet and I just did it to support Minneapolis, or I live in Seattle and we have riots as well, or I live in LA and we have riots. And that's why, I thought this was a great idea, whatever it might be. But this, something simple as a Lokai bracelet can, unite people across the world. The friendship bracelet's already doing it. But those go away after about 3 or 4 months of taking showers. It's going to fall off.
Yeah.
And, we're not going to keep making bracelets, through school, because the kids have school. But the Lokai can be something that can be continued on, that we can still ship out, send out to people. And people still be able to donate, because right now, like, we're getting, like I said, the Grace Church group donated $1,000 and they only took like 10 bracelets.
Right.
So we do have people. To Harrison Smith, he made a big donation and took 3 or 4 bracelets. So we want that to be able to still happen, where if you just want one Lokai, but you still want to donate more money, there's going to be a link on there as well to donate on the site. But the bracelet piece is the big part that we want people to be able to have something tangible. So we are in the works of partnering with Caribou Coffee. We just met with Shields
Nice.
about, them putting it at their front lanes for people to be able to buy from Shields and then still donate the $2 or $3 back. But, overall, I think it's something different that, has opened up our minds to just philanthropy and things we can do outside of that. The race walk being one of them. Next year, our plan is to do some kind of Ryder Cup golf format with about 8 people, using 2 of the Vikings guys that already agreed. So Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph are the 2 players. They said they'd be in. Harrison Smith said he'd be in for it. But just figuring out when we can do it, what date we can do it. Because, the snow's going to come fast here. So we're kind of already, and then football started. So the goal is sometime next year, when the snow melts in the spring, to partner with FSN and then do this Ryder Cup kind of charity deal with those 2 guys being the captains, and then, kind of having a celebrity team as well, of just local guys like John Randall, those kind of guys. Meat Sauce from KFAN said
Paul.
he playing it, and Mark Parrish said he playing it, Common Man, and just have a group, kind of a Ryder Cup group, Team Thielen, Team Rudolph, matching outfits type deal.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
I'm working with Adidas to be the sponsor, one, because of Thielen, and then my partnership as well with Adidas, but having them be kind of the Ryder Cup, polo, whatever, or if it's quarter zips or if it's some weird hat, whatever, but just matching outfits as well. So it really looks good on TV and has that Ryder Cup feel. But people will be able to text in and tweet, share, that they want to donate and see how much money we can raise. Just, 4 or 8 group of guys is playing some golf and having fun.
That's amazing. I think that this whole process really speaks volumes to Minnesota and how like connected and passionate people are about what's going on here in Minneapolis, and how many people want to help and how many people are ready to like step up and help. I mean, from Tony Dungy down the list, you ran through people that haven't been in Minnesota for a long time and are in Minnesota currently and are ready to act, and that's just really cool that you just started it with your daughter and it picked up that kind of traction, and now you're talking about a Ryder Cup and incorporating Adidas and all these other people. So congrats to you, Ron. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's been you know, and again, I have to give hats off to CJ Ham. Like, we had a pop up in their neighborhood, and ended up raising like $7,800. You know, being out in Rosemount is where he lives.
Dang.
But yeah, CJ got behind it. The police in the area from that Rosemount area came out as well. The kids got to get in the police car, see the police car, talk to the police. Because that was another piece. We think that, you know, we're hoping with the run in Chan, those Carver County sheriffs will come out as well and bring their car and do the deal with the stickers. Because I think the kids need to, especially kids of color, but the kids need to be able to see cops, and cops need to see them. You know, if you're policing an area, you should know your area. You know, when I grew up, our police officers in Detroit would come around the neighborhood. We'd be playing basketball. That's why I love the videos of officers getting out playing basketball with the kids.
Right.
That's a huge thing when those kids are deciding on making a bad decision, if they actually know cops, but also if they made a bad decision and the cops know them, you know, they know how to handle that kid or that area. But if they're not, you know, nothing against cops that don't live in Minneapolis, but if you don't live there, you don't know how to police it sometimes. You know, you don't have the same compassion. And that's why we want those cops to show up to these pop-ups so that they're able to interact with the families and have those conversations. If they did feel like something was done wrong with George Floyd, they can voice that. You know, they might not be able to do it on social media, but they can have that conversation with those people. And that's, you know, what we've seen so much from that. That's why the CJ Ham one was such a great one, because we had the pop-up, you know, the bouncy house for the kids. We had the Jimmy John's, but the police showing up, I think was huge. And, you know, and so from the people alone, like within the first like hour, I think we were at like $2,000 in the first hour of people just coming out, you know, trying to get a bracelet, but also meet the kids, take pictures. So, you know, that was cool. And then like next Tuesday, we're in Edina, with a guy, you know, I guess his family lives over there. He plays for the Penguins, and he's hurt. But I know Carly Zucker, you know, she's talking about coming over to the Edina one as well. And, you know, it's just growing and growing where people want to host. But we also, you know, realize like we can't go to the same places over and over and over again. You know, it's like, let's move around a little. So we are going out to St. Paul. We're going to do one in Minneapolis. And then I think the next ones, we're probably going to try to go up to like Maple Grove area, because we haven't been up in that area, or like Blaine area, even we haven't been over there.
Sure.
So looking at places we have not been, but also it's not so much about just going there. It's about that person who lives there promoting it. And I think that's why CJ and Steph Ham, theirs was so big. They promoted it with their entire neighborhood. Their neighborhood has a Facebook account type board, message board. So she posted it there. You know, it's those groups when the person who's hosting it is interacting with their neighbors and letting them know this is going on, that's when there's, you know, buy-in. It's not just the fact that we're showing up. I mean, it's not like we're LeBron James or something. You know, it's
right.
We definitely need the community interaction with the person who's willing to host it, versus, you know, just thinking, okay, I'm hosting it and people are going to show up just because they're coming. It's like, it's not really that. It's people knowing what's going on. So that's what's been cool about it.
That's sweet. I just love the idea that it came from, you know, filling time and trying not to be bored during quarantine to, you know, and wanting to make money, being hustlers. I totally get that, you know, the extended version of like Lemonade Stand, to then, oh, wow, we really have a serious cause and an impact to be made with the proceeds, to now, okay, how can we scale this? How can we bring the community together? How can we kind of create change in a long-term way? And we're talking over the span of, correct me if I'm wrong, but like 4 or 5 months.
Where were we at? August? Yeah.
August,
so,
yeah.
I mean, no, actually it was, I mean, we started, I think it was June or July, whenever the George Floyd happened.
Yeah, George Floyd was right at the end of May. So yeah, June, so July.
It was like June 6th.
Yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, like basically like 2 months.
That's amazing though, man. So cool.
Yeah.
And I love how like the community is rallying around it. And I think that's like one thing people are kind of missing right now, or trying to fill that void in different ways with COVID and everything, just like trying to find different ways to create a community, go out and do something that's fun and beneficial. And it's freaking cool though. So you said you grew up in Detroit.
Yep.
Cool. And then recruited to play football at Minnesota.
Yep.
What was that whole recruiting process like?
Well, I mean,
we've been through that too, and we just know it's just kind of crazy. As 18-year-olds, that was like the most stress we had been under at that point in our lives.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was honestly like it wasn't that crazy. I mean, it was pretty normal, I guess, what I was used to. My dad played for the Steelers, so
Right.
growing up with a dad that was a 2-time Super Bowl champion,
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty normal. I was already, at a young age, because we went and played, in the Little League World Series stuff as a kid, and played on teams with guys like Prince Fielder. So, I think I can't remember when, but I had a shortstop, had a ball in the hole. No, sorry, second base. I had a ball hitting the hole, kind of barehanded it with one. I don't even remember doing this, but my dad would tell that story all the time. But ball was hitting the hole, must have hit a pebble or something, took a weird bounce. I barehanded it and still like jumped and threw a guy out. So that was like on the news and in the papers. And
That's sick.
so early on, college coaches, when I think by the time I got to high school, I grew 6 inches in one summer. So I went from like 5'6" to 6'2" in one summer. And so after that, it was, UCLA, USC, Tennessee, Georgia, Kansas, Michigan State. But when it got serious, it was really just Michigan State, Kansas, Penn State, and Minnesota wasn't even on the radar, to be honest. The only reason Minnesota even got a look was because Tony Dungy and my dad were professional teammates with the Steelers, and Dungy was a family friend. And so Glenn Mason, I think, got the job. He had just left Kansas, went to Minnesota, reached out. Somehow he knew Tony Dungy, reached out to Tony Dungy, and Dungy reached out to my dad. And, that was all that it took, because I trusted Dungy and my dad trusted him. And so when he suggested Minnesota, we had the coach come out and meet. So Glenn Mason came out. I flew out to Minnesota for my visit, and just wasn't so much fell in love with it. It was the fact that all the guys here, there was like 6 guys from Detroit already on the team. And then my 2 high school teammates plus a third high school teammate was transferring to Minnesota. So I went to high school with Karan Riley. He was transferring from SMU. Jermaine Landrum, who was a 6'4" outside linebacker, came here that year. And then Ray Eddington as well, who was like a 6'5" middle linebacker, was coming here that year as well. So, and then we had another guy from a high school down the road we played against. He had committed to come here. So it was just a lot of Detroit guys already here. Plus, all those guys were coming, like 5 guys I knew from Detroit coming that same year. And so it just felt better. It felt like the place to be. Honestly, like I knew a ton about Michigan, but I didn't know much about Minnesota, which I think was good. I didn't know who the guys of the team were. So when I came in, there was nothing like, I wasn't like looking at lockers like, oh, that's so-and-so's locker. That's, that's so-and-so. And that's, like seeing Charles, like I know Charles Woodson now and we're friends, but like I told him then, like, seeing Charles Woodson, it was like, wow, that's Chuck. That's, and even hanging out with him and Jerome Bettis and guys like that, because I visited Notre Dame and I knew those guys. And so I had that. But in Minnesota, I mean, I didn't really have that here. I knew Tony Dungy and that was really it. Minnesota just started really building that stardom stuff, the Lawrence Maronis, the Marion Barbers, the Eric Deckers. But before Dungy, there was Bobby Bell. That was it. So if you're not a fan, you don't really know. You didn't know those guys. You didn't know. Right. Now being a Gopher, I know some of the names, but they weren't a national stage name. Now you got the Rashad Batemans, the Tyler Johnsons. You get those names now where you're seeing the national plays being made, the Tanner Morgans.
Right.
But even that, you didn't have top tier quarterbacks here. You didn't have a guy where you're like, oh, that guy's a first round pick quarterback. We didn't have that here. You had your defensive guys. But yeah, so I think that was good. Coming in, it was just Luke Leverson. So it felt right. Like it felt like, the coaches told me, they didn't lie. They said, hey, you have a chance to come here and start as a freshman. And I was like, okay, cool. And that was one of the main reasons why I picked Minnesota. So it wasn't like it was a whole bunch of recruiting stuff where I was just worried, like, oh man, like I don't know who to pick. And, I'm having anguish over. I had another one after my visit to Minnesota and they gave me the official offer. I called Penn State and told them I'm canceling my last visit. Appreciate you guys recruiting me, but I'm not going to make the trip out there. And that was all she wrote. And honestly, I'm glad that Penn State wanted me to play athlete. Athlete now is okay. Like coaches, kids are coming in now all the time as athletes. Back then in the 90s, being an athlete it was a death sentence, because when you get there, they don't know where to put you.
Right.
So you're kind of screwed.
That first year you're bouncing around. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I didn't want that. I wanted to come in and I'm a receiver. I'm not a safety anymore. I didn't want to play safety. My dad was a defensive back. So I think and he was a Pittsburgh guy. So the Penn State people knew him. So I think people just assumed like, oh, he's going to be a safety. And I was a pretty good safety. I mean, I could catch. So, balls in my area, it's a pick. And that's what I think. And at 6'3", I think, looking back, maybe I should have played safety. But at the time, I wanted to start. I wanted to be a star. I wanted the ball. I wanted to score touchdowns. And so when Penn State came in, I was like, we'll recruit you as an athlete. We'll just bring you in, and we don't know where we're going to put you. It didn't sit well with me. It was like, yeah, you're Joe Paterno, but I want to go somewhere where they know they have a plan for me. And Michigan was close. Like Lloyd Carr was my dad's coach in college. And so Lloyd just assumed I was coming there. So he didn't recruit me hard. He just like, his legacy. He's coming, his dad, I coached his dad. His dad knows me, trusts me. He's coming to Michigan. And I didn't feel like they wanted me as much. They had already recruited David Terrell and Marquise Walker, who were like in the top 10. I was up there in the top 10 as well. But,
damn,
you get three, you think you're going to get 3 receivers in the top 10 in the country. At that point, I'm like, now I'm good, because in the state of Michigan, I was top 10 just overall. And so, but David was like number 1 in New York.
Okay.
And Marquise, or I forgot, no, David was Virginia. Marquise was New York. And they both were like, Marquise, David was number 1 for sure. David Terrell was the number 1 player. I remember coming out of New York or Virginia, but then also Ronald Curry was coming out that year, and he ended up going to North Carolina. And so he was going to go to Michigan, but then picked North Carolina because he wanted to play quarterback. And I'll never forget, when they got Marquise Walker to come in, I'm like, you already got Ty Streets, you got, all these other guys, and Amani Toomer. I'm like, no, Michigan's not, like, I'll end up redshirting, which wouldn't have been bad. Like now, redshirting actually is okay because you can get more degrees. Like you can graduate early and then get a master's for free. And, going back, I probably would have told myself to redshirt because it did. My freshman year here was okay. Broke some records as a freshman, but as a sophomore, I could have done a lot more damage as a redshirt and then gotten more education out of it because I graduated my junior year. So that means I would have had 2 more years to get a free master's. So I do kind of wish I would have done that, but at the end of the day, not that big of a deal.
Any big turmoil? You're like, because you mentioned freshman year, you put up some big records, some great numbers. Any big turmoil, like going from high school to college? Was there a point where like, shit, these guys are beasts, I'm gonna have to step up to this extreme? Or when you kind of walk down, you're like, let's rock, I'm gonna do my thing and it's gonna work out?
Yeah, in high school I was 6'3", 212 pounds. So
dude.
like, I was just freakishly like big. Like I was bigger already. Like I was skinny, but 6'3", 212 in high school, I was bigger than a lot
You
of
bodied
guys.
everyone.
Yeah, that's good length and strength.
Yeah, when I got here, I wasn't like technically sound. I was terrible at running routes. Like I comebacks and all that stuff. We didn't do any of that in high school. We ran go routes, slants, hitches. That was it. And posts and post corner. That was the other one. So other than that, that was it. That's the only routes I really had. So coming here, it was a struggle to learn some of the other routes, comebacks, the short, quick dig routes where you got to kind of stick your foot in the ground and go. I was used to the choppy 12-yard dig and all that stuff. And so learning the routes was tough. But like when it came to like red zone stuff, catching fades, one-on-one, I killed guys in one-on-one because I was just bigger. So no, I didn't really struggle much. My first game, I scored a touchdown against Houston in college. So my very first college game, scored a touchdown. So, in that, man, I'm like, oh my God, this is easy. Like,
right.
This is what college football is. And granted, when we got to the Big Ten, then I started to really like, okay, wait, it's a little bit different. Houston is good. But, when you're playing Michigan, my freshman year, we played Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Wisconsin, of course, Iowa. So when you get to the Michigans, then you're like, oh, wait, okay, wow, these guys are big. Like, these are some strong, senior veteran cornerbacks. Michigan had just come off the big Rose Bowl year with Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
So that next year they still had those guys and some of the bigger defensive backs they had.
Right.
So it wasn't, but no, early on, I think my freshman year I got to like 220. So I was like 6'3", 220 my freshman year. So yeah, no, it wasn't a big, like huge change. I was bigger than the DBs. I was the same size as some of the linebackers. Mentally, yes, it was a lot more mental. It was a lot quicker game. But I didn't really struggle much besides the intricacy stuff, the route running and that other stuff. School wise, I was kind of prepared. I think my freshman year I had like a 3.6.
Right.
So I was prepared to come here and say, I want to graduate early. Like I knew that I wanted to get out of here early. So a lot of that stuff my dad had prepared me for and, kind of really had my mind right going into college. I ran in the Junior Olympics as well. So I was a hurdler and qualified for the
110s or 300.
both. So,
Hell
so
yeah.
I was a state champ.
Grinder.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I was a state champ in the 110s. No, sorry, city champ in the 110s, state runner-up in the 110s, and then the 300s. I was second in the city, and then I forgot what I was in the state, and then nationally, I ended up being like in the top 10 in the 400s at that point, and then 110s. I think I finished like, I don't know, 18th or 19th.
Okay.
Yeah,
but, with the 6'3" length, it was almost just stepping over it. Yeah.
But
timing wise,
it was.
When you get to the Junior Olympics and it's the nationals, those kids are like college guys. They're trying to go to college and run. And I was like, I'm just here to work out. And so it was good though, because when I left the Junior Olympics in Virginia, I literally went from Virginia. So I didn't drive, like my freshman year, I didn't bring my clothes to school. My uncle drove my stuff to campus for me with my dad. And they put all my like bins. I just had a bunch of bins with clothes and crap, and they put it at the facility. And the Gophers guys were like, hey, we'll put Ron's stuff in there because they knew I wasn't coming. And so I didn't get there the first week when everybody showed up. I got there in week 2, right before conditioning was starting. So then I showed up right before the test, but I've been running track. So the 110 test for me was easy. Like it was like 110s, that's it. Like, all right, let's go. And so I was cruising through. Killed that, and then Mason and them were looking like, wow. And I was like, no, coach, I'm like, trust me, we've been running 300 cycles. Like we've been doing 300s, walk 100, do another 300, walk 100, do another 300. Like we were like our track team we were the city champs and state runner up. So we were we had 4 girls go to Michigan State. We had 2 guys, like we had the national. So the other guy that hurdled with me was the national champ. So I actually ran with the best kid in the country for our age group. He was like, he's legit, went to college and ran. The guy that ran the 400 was the national champ for the 400. He ended up going to Michigan State and running. We had another guy that went to Baylor and ran the 4x4 with them. So we had, our high school was like it's a magnet school. So they recruit and get kids from all over the state. Like we're basically like Crete, Durham Hall, I guess you'd say,
right?
Or De La Salle. You can recruit kids and they test in to get to your school.
Yeah, St. Thomas Academy. Yeah,
kind of like that. Yeah. But like there was an article in the paper about, because we just got like a $55 million building like a couple years ago. But like Nick Perry, who played for the Packers, went to my school.
Yep.
Anthony Adams played for the Bears. Karan Riley, draft pick, went here. Jermaine Landrum here. Braylon Edwards, he went there at one point. The kid that just went, Lavert Hill, who's now with, I forgot what team he got picked up by, but Seahawks, I think, he was just there last year, went to Michigan. We've had a bunch of guys come out of that school, like I think probably 15 or 16 draft picks like in the last 6 years. They've won the state championship the last 8 out of 10 years. So they have guys like Donnie Corley, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who just got drafted. He went there. So yeah, we've had guy after guy after guy, that have gone on to play, not just in college, but in the NFL. And so our school has always been that. Like we've always had the numbers and the people. So coming here was just like, I had been doing this running stuff. We had already done the workout stuff. So that was the easy thing too. Like I was already in shape. Where a lot of guys, freshmen, were doing this test. They were throwing up, making the run time. I mean, you know how it is with the run conditioning test.
Oh yeah.
So we had a bunch of guys, and I'm just like, wow, this is nothing like compared to a track workout.
Yeah.
So that's why I always in the summers I would run with the track team at Minnesota when I could, because I knew it was a tougher workout. Like I knew it was a different beast. And that's why it was not a hard transition. But that was my dad too. My
I was
dad,
gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, when I quit basketball my sophomore year, because me and the coach got into it over me being sick. I was sick, didn't show up for practice. He thought I was lying. And I get it. I went to an all-black school. So just the stigma about schools like that or kids is we don't, we're not gonna do what we're supposed to do it. And
one sign of quote unquote lack of responsibility, and they're gonna jump on it.
Yep. Yeah. And so they just assumed I was missing practice to miss practice, and I was actually homesick. And our school had a policy, because of how many athletes we had, that if you miss school, you can't practice. Like it's not one of those, okay, I'm going to the dentist and then I'm going to football practice. No, you miss school, you're not going to practice.
Gotcha.
So you need to make that decision and maybe go to a dentist in afternoon after school and miss practice even. Like they were big on grades at our school. Like that was a good thing though. I'm glad they did that to us, because I look at all my friends now who are doing well in life, and it was because of the way our school treated us versus some of the other city schools in Detroit. And so with that being said, with all the stuff and how our like the coaches were, they still were like, oh, well, no, I don't know. You're lying. You just missed practice because you went to miss practice. Like, no, I was sick. So I basically tried to coach Carr to me. oh, you're going to run, you're going to do this, and then we'll let you back on the team. I'm like, well, screw you. I quit. Like, I'm done. But I knew my dad was like, you can't just quit. You're going to do something else. And you have to have a reason why. Like, you're not a quitter. So what's the reason? And I told him. And then the coach begged, though, like, oh, man, make him play basketball. Because I was 6'3" in high school. So he's like, yeah, we need him. And I could shoot. Like, I still can shoot to this day. I play against high school kids all the time now. I still kill them at 40. And
intramural champion over here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were intramural champions at the University of Minnesota. We had a bunch of football players that played and we won. But I told him no. And so my dad was like, well, what's he going to do? And so I went and talked to the track coach. And he's like, yeah, you can run indoor track. So we had indoor track in Michigan. So I can run indoor track with him. I ended up being like the indoor 60-meter champion in hurdles. But he's like, you can come run indoor with us and then run outdoor. So I was like, well, if I run outdoor, I got to quit baseball. But I'm like, I don't care. Baseball is boring anyway now. So I'm done. And so I quit baseball, quit basketball, and just ran track. And honestly, the reason I did it too is I saw practice. In our school, girls and boys practice together. So I'm like, man, I get to practice with the girls too. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a double bonus.
That's
like
a shoe-in.
I'm working out, but now, there's 60 girls, running up and down the hallway, running outside with us, hanging out in the, on the bus on the way to the meets, in the vans on the way to the meets. They didn't have like a boy van and a girl van. It was just like getting the vans. So, it would be all the cool kids in the van. So you can, it wasn't boring. It wasn't like a boring trip with a bunch of dudes. It was like actual conversations between girls and guys. And it is a coach driving us. So, it's parents monitor. So we weren't just like out there partying, but it still was fun. Like you're not just running a bunch of dudes all day.
And not to say being around a bunch of dudes is a bad thing. I mean, bus rides on JV football games were the best.
Yeah, it gets boring though. Like 60 different trips, and you're like,
oh sure,
dude, I'm sick of
it's a great change up.
Yeah, it's a good change up. And so that was the fun part too. So like when I found that out, like all the trips were boy girl trips. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in. And so and I quit, and so I stopped playing basketball, but. That's what helped me. I'm glad I did it because it helped me with football, helped my, my stride, working on running, my conditioning for college when I got here. So, it ended up paying off, which I'm glad my dad stayed on me. Cause I don't know when I quit, I don't know if I'd have ran. I think I probably would have just been a hallway kid where I'm just like,
hallway and football.
Yeah. I'm gonna just go to basketball games with my Letterman on. I'm gonna, go to maybe the track meets every once in a while, hang out with people, but I'm going to be in the hall, in football, lift weights. And then go home.
Right.
Yeah. But no, my dad was like, nope, you're doing something. And so track was it.
Right
Good
on.
Man. So being from Detroit, coming out here to Minnesota, now you're 40, out here still living in Minnesota. When did you feel like Minnesota was going to be your home?
That's tough. I'd say probably like 2012. So I didn't move back here until like 2009. I had a house here, but wasn't here much because I still was playing. I went to the Bears in 05 and then the Redskins in 06. Then went to Canada in 07. Then went to the Arena League in like 2008, 2009.
Okay.
And then coached in 2009 with the coach. Well, 2008 and 2009 as well with the coach because the Arena League season was opposite NFL. So I was able to play and then coach and then play and then went back to coach. And 2009-ish, I would say, is when it started to feel like, okay, this is it. Because I had a house here in like 05, but, I just had it. I'm like, okay, my girlfriend, which is my wife now, she was here. So I'm like, okay, I'll come back every once in a while. But like in 09, and then that 3-year period to 2012. 2012, I started working for Best Buy and was commentating with the Big Ten Network. And that's when it started to really because a lot of my friends who I played with, Tony Patterson, Aston Osai, Jared Ellison, they all were like, starting to move back and put roots down here as well because those guys aren't from here either. But then they end up start dating girls that my wife was friends with. And then it started to feel more like, okay, like this is where I can be. I can be here. And we had just had a baby like in 2011. And so I'm like, okay, Minnesota is starting to feel like, okay. And then I think what really solidified it was in 2014, Fox and the Vikings signed that deal to do the pregame show on Fox, and they walked away from, I think it was Care 11 at the time, and they went over to Fox, and then Fox said, hey, do you want to be a part of the show? And the first year was just me and Hobie Artigue on Fox 9, just me and him, no backing from any sponsors, not much from the Vikings, just doing our own thing. Vikings loved it. Fox loved it. And then the next year is when it kind of took off when they built the stadium because then we started doing it from the stadium. They bought in Ben Lieber. They bought in Wabi at the time as well. Pete Bursich jumped on. Don Mitchell jumped on. And then that's when it really became a pregame show complete, but with sponsors and all the backing of the fans. And the Vikings are really on board for it. that's when it really started to feel like home. Because then I was kind of ingratiated in the media and the people, and getting back out there. And then I think the other stuff became icing on the cake. PJ Fleck getting the job and him wanting to do a show, Fox getting that.
Oh yeah.
The Gopher seeing the Vikings pregame show and saying, hey, Fox, we're thinking about doing this for the Gophers. And, they went out to Care 11 CCO, but then they realized, look, Fox does the best job. So they signed with Fox as well. And so we've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 years since PJ's been here. So it's been good. It's been extremely positive. It's been good. But that's 2012 was kind of when I said, okay, this is where I need to be,
Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah, because we're both from not around here either. I'm from Denver. Andrew's from Chicago. Both recruited to play up at St. Thomas, and then been here now 6 years if you include the 4 years at St. Thomas.
Right.
And that thought always goes through my head. Like, I got moved out to Arizona for the summer, and I'm like, man, Arizona's hot as shit. There's no lakes. Not saying that Arizona is bad. Like, I'm playing more golf in my life than I ever have, but there's all kinds of positive and negatives. And I definitely want to travel around a little bit, get to see more stuff before I decide on somewhere. But Minnesota rocks, man. I can see why you would want to stake the ground in here, because there's just so much good things. And I understand why people are just so passionate about the state. Like, there's a route that people can get stuck in sometimes where they just are always in Minnesota because they love it so much. But I kind of get it,
Yeah.
And
there's always something to do here.
Exactly. For so more currently now with PJ being a head coach and everything, have you been able to generate a pretty sweet relationship with him?
I wouldn't say a sweet relationship. I mean, we I have his wife's number, and my wife, his wife basically reached out to my wife years ago when we first started kind of doing the show at the state fair. And then 2 years ago, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so then PJ and his wife started reaching out to make sure my wife was okay and checking on her. But yeah, I mean, doing our shows and stuff. Yeah, we definitely have conversations off the air. We talk about stuff that he knows I'm not going to bring up in the media. So I think at this point now he knows he can trust me because, he said stuff to me where, you don't see a tweet about it later. You don't see it on the news later. Or a comment he's made about a player or a situation or another coach. He knows I'm not going to go out there and say, oh, PJ Fleck just said this and this is what he said.
Sure.
He knows he can trust me. So I think that's the part of it, is the trust, because you never really know who you can trust. But I think I've earned that, at least, that he knows I'm on his side. I'm on every coach's side, though. I told him that too. I'm like, it has nothing to do with you. It's the program. I'm going to back the program. If PJ leaves and makes a business decision and goes to wherever, I'm going to back the next coach. I'm going to be disappointed because of all the coaches other than Glenn Mason. I would say, yes, I have the closest relationship with PJ for sure. Yeah. It's Kill and I were okay, but not to this level. And maybe the media is part of the reason why I'm around PJ so much. But even aside from the media stuff, guys like Decker aren't in the media, and we're in the locker room together, and he's allowing us to come into the locker room after the games. And, for whatever people want to say, I think the only difference with Kill and his group was just the fact that Bierman was so open so you can walk in there. The new facility is a little different. So you do kind of have to not make an appointment, but let them know you're coming so you can make sure you can get in, because the doors do lock. But I think that's more for everybody's security. You don't want people just walking through being able to just grab something or steal something or to go off on a player, because they have so much free food over there now for the players with the new NCAA rules. And there's all kinds of stuff. So, but at the end of the day, the strength coaches, they'll say, hey, come work out, if you want to work out. And
that's sick.
Yeah, it's definitely, nothing's changed. It just looks a lot different. But as far as PJ, yeah, he is, of all the coaches in the last, 8-9 years since Mason left, I do have the closest relationship with him where, I can reach out to him for something or say, hey, this is what I'm doing. He signed an oar for us, that kind of stuff. So he's a good guy, though.
I remember the Penn State game this past year, and everyone was on the field. I think it was you and Decker were next to each other or something, and you grabbed PJ, and he was super pissed about it, and then he turned around and saw it was you, gave you a big old hug and shit.
No, reverse. He grabbed. We didn't see him.
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay, that's what it was.
Me and Decker were talking.
Yep.
And PJ was walking with Heather, and he grabbed us.
Yeah.
And so I thought he was a fan at first. So
right.
I kind of looked like, what are you doing?
Right.
And then I'm like, oh, it's PJ.
Yeah.
Because Heather said it later. She's like, yeah, he loves you guys. But yeah, you definitely were shocked. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't know who that was.
No one just grabbed you like that.
Yeah, but it was his adrenaline. He just
100%.
And he I'm glad I didn't have a suit on, because he would have ripped my shirt. So yeah, he yanked us up like like was just, I mean, he was jacked up. But I get it now. But yeah, the video, when the video got released, then somebody tweeted to me like, "Hey man,
super funny.
what's going on with you and PJ at this moment?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I was like, I was like, if it was somebody else, I probably would have like not punched him because I don't want to get arrested.
Yeah,
but I
a strong arm.
I would have shoved him down. Like, dude, chill out. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that serious. Like, I don't mind the hugs from the fans.
Right.
Don't like grab my collar like you're mad at me. But yeah, he was just jacked up, and yeah, when we did not see him coming, we had no idea it was him. And the only reason I like quick change was because I saw the cop, and I'm like, oh, it's PJ, because he's down there. So you got to kind of like you first look over, it's like you see the cop, but then you look down, it's like, oh, it's PJ. Down there. So yeah, but no, he's a good guy. Me and Decker, we talk all the time about that. We love him. Like I said, we've talked to Tyler, we've talked to Rashad. It's definitely wide receiver U right now. Just the number of receivers are getting, and kind of like TCU had built for a while, Oregon.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference in Gopher receivers versus Oregon receivers is our receivers are actually going to stay in the league.
Right.
You look at Oregon receivers, they all get a shot, but they don't run real routes. When you come here, you're going to run real routes, comebacks, hitches, goals, slants, and the fact in the offense being that RPO, learning patience. I think a lot of recruits are noticing that. And so, and when you have a head coach of a receiver and then a receivers coach that was really good, and he's the pass game coordinator now. PJ's doing.
What's the receivers coach name again?
Matt Simon.
Matt Simon. He coached at St. Thomas for a little bit.
Yep, and he's from Farmington, so he went to Farmington High School.
Okay.
And but Matt's a good coach, and he's the next, probably true coordinator. Once he gets his feet wet a little bit more, I'm pretty sure if he sticks around and PJ sticks around, he'll be the next coordinator here.
PJ really led us. I mean, he gave his stamp in Western Michigan too with that one receiver played for the Titans, Corey Davis. Yeah, I mean, he did that with a program like Western Michigan, so his track record is proven with those route runners.
Yeah. Corey. I mean, Corey was about the size of like Bateman and what's his name, Tyler, and so yeah, they do a good job with receivers as a whole. I mean, Chris Altman-Bell is going to be next up, and people are going to see him this season, and they're going to be like, man, this kid's good too. So that's the thing is looking at the recruits. You got the kid from Rosemount, Man, and you got the kid from Chicago. They just got the athlete, but he's going to play receiver, I guess. But Demetrius Douglas, same thing. Ball him in as a DB, realize right away, no, you're a receiver. That's the kind of thing that I like about PJ too. They're quick to understand who they're getting and where they should put them. A lot of times you get a guy in, you don't know where to put him. That's why I honestly believe if PJ was the coach when J.D. Spielman was coming out of high school, J.D. Spielman would have been a Gopher.
Yeah.
Because they would have had a plan for him right away and been able to tell him, this is how we want to use you. This is where you're going to be in our offense. And that's why PJ, I think, puts himself ahead of the crowd when you look at all the big-time recruits they're getting right now. I mean, they're getting DBs for sure. Our receivers now. Like, they're getting a ton of receivers and running backs.
Sweet.
Because they're just drawing out, this is what we want to do. And even quarterbacks. They got the kid from Illinois that's a 4-star, quarterback, has a long name, Athabanafa, whatever.
Okay.
Athanaklis or whatever, however you say it. But, the fact to get him, a 4-star kid who's killing it right now on the circuit for 707 and getting some of the big offers now. PJ got him early as a sophomore, recognized the talent right away, saw him throwing the ball down there, saw what he did in high school, and, kid fell in love with the program. And it fits because he's a kid that'll come in here in a year and, he'll be behind probably Jacob Clark, but then he'll get to go his next year, and that's the goal is not trying to get the top kid to come in and play right away as a freshman, doing like Alabama. You're going to come in, you're going to sit for a year or two, and then we're going to make you a star. That's how you build a program when you have guys in the stable that when one guy goes down, like you lose a Bateman, you have Chris Altman-Bell and Demetrius Douglas ready to go, plus Man coming in from high school. So you have to do that, where some programs, and back in the day, you lose a guy, it's like, oh my goodness, the program's over. And kind of like Glenn Mason, he always had 2 backs ready to go. You had Thomas Hamner, Tellis Redmond. Thomas leaves, Tellis now's the guy. Marion Barber comes in right after that. You got Tellis and Barber. Tellis leaves. Then you got Barber. Barber comes in with Gary Russell. Barber gets hurt. Gary Russell's playing with Terry Jackson, 2,000-yard receivers, names you never heard of, both really good though. Gary Russell goes to the NFL. Marion Barber goes to the NFL. Lawrence Maroney's right there ready to go. Lawrence Maroney goes with Gary Russell. And then they get 1,000 apiece. It was
next man up.
Mason had built that, and it just sucks that he got fired over losing some bowl games.
Right.
That was, but to go to 8 bowl games in 10 years, that's not a fireable offense in my opinion. Yes, he didn't beat Wisconsin enough, but who has? That's some of the things where I look at, like, if Mason were to really get fired, it should have been the Brewster years if that would have been his team. Like if that would have been his issue where he went 1-11, that should have been Mason's last year maybe. Okay, it's time for you to go. Now it's Jerry Keel. It shouldn't have been Mason, Brewster, Keel. It should have been Mason, Keel maybe, and then PJ. I think that should have been like Brewster should have never happened.
Right.
But that's just, I think Joe Maturi at the time, being pressured by the president and other people probably and saying, all right, let's, because the owe Mason that much money. He had just signed a contract and then you fire him over a bowl game.
It doesn't make sense.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
And so that's like that's like breaking up with your girlfriend after she gives you a gift. Like she didn't do anything wrong.
You gotta be smarter about that.
Yeah, like the gift wasn't as good as you thought. Like, oh, I really wanted that new motorized scooter, and you got me a mountain bike. Like I didn't want a mountain bike.
Or at least wait 2 weeks until another bad situation comes up, and then the gift is no longer a problem.
And nothing came up besides the fact that the next year when Brewster took over, they went 1-11. So maybe that team was on that path, but I don't know because I think Mason's offense was built to run where Brewster came in, didn't have the personnel to do what he wanted to do, and wasn't smart enough to just coach what he had.
Right.
He tried to put a square peg in a round hole. It didn't work, and so it's just one of those things that the Gophers are always going to have that black eye. You're always going to have that Brewster black eye where it's like, why did you do that?
Right.
Right.
So
outside of like giving your blood, sweat, and tears to the Gophers, why, like what's kept that flame lit for so long? Because they haven't been hyper competitive. I mean, you mentioned bowl games, but there's been a ton of 8-8 seasons and probably a little bit less than that. What's been that thing that's kept was it the 3 years and given the blood, sweat, and tears, or was there something else with the Gophers?
No, it definitely went 8-8. It was a bunch of 6-6 for a while. But I mean, honestly, if you look at Mason, like I said, 8 bowl games in 10 years. You look at the Brewster window. Yeah, it was bad that 1 year, but then the next 2 years they did go to a bowl game, so he turned it around. Oh, no. I think they went 7-6, and then he sucked and got fired. But then you got Keel comes in. 1 bad year, and then same thing with him. They went to a bowl game, and then they went to a New Year's Day bowl. They were 9-4. So it actually hasn't been that, it hasn't been PJ-esque because right now we're just in the media bunch because PJ is a very loud guy and a very lovable guy.
Sure.
He's going to put the program on a pedestal and talk about it all the time. He's a Twitter-friendly coach, Instagram-friendly coach where Clay's wasn't. Keel definitely wasn't. I don't think Brewster knew what it was. Brewster's on Twitter now because he's tweeting all the time. But, I don't think Brewster knew what some of that stuff was. Now he does. But, Clay's and Keel weren't social media. Like, I can't see Clay's posting a video of himself talking about Gophers and Caribou coffee. You know what I mean? Like, it just wasn't there. And so I think for PJ and for me, the reason I've stuck with it is because they have had winning seasons. They have had big bowl games. They have had the intermediate guys like Eric Decker and some of these guys in between that were crossovers of Keel and Brewster and the Simone Lawrences and, the Matt Space and Max Williams. He was in that group. So they've had some guys and Cobb and, they've had guys here and there sprinkled in there. I think with PJ, what we're seeing is just an emphasis on the new rules. So I can talk about text and guys all the time. I can talk about them on social media now, where before you couldn't make a mention of a kid committing. And now,
oh, really?
Yeah. Now if a kid commits, you can retweet him, and all that stuff. Or if he takes a visit, you can retweet him. You can't initiate the tweet, but if he tweets it, you can retweet him.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of that stuff
is so weird.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff I think is helping PJ, and he's just good at it though, because there's still coaches out there that don't utilize it. I mean, you look at Notre Dame. I mean, he doesn't have to though. Brian Kelly, right? It's Notre Dame. Guys are going to come there, but I can't remember the last time I saw Lovie Smith tweet something. Like in Illinois, like right. Just some coaches don't know how to, or they don't think they need to. But I think that's the reason why I've been around the program. They've had some good years. The 9-4 year with Clay's when they went to the whatever bowl. Was it the Outback Bowl?
Outback, yeah.
Yeah. So, they've had those years. And so, but at the end of the day too, I've always supported the program, even when Mason was the coach, because I came out of it. I've just, I've been that guy. I'm loyal to those that are loyal to me. The Gophers have always been loyal to me. Just like the Vikings. I have no ties with the Vikings, didn't play for the Vikings, nothing at all, but they're extremely loyal. They give me a ton of access. And so I'm loyal to them. I'm going to put my best foot forward when it comes to them. I'm never going to bash the team, even if it is a bad game. I'm going to find a way to find some positive in it. But I am going to talk about them because that's my job. But I'm never going to be disrespectful where, the whole like, oh my God, they suck. It's time to fire this guy. Because at the end of the day, people mess up in every job. Somebody doesn't get you the right car, or somebody doesn't sell you the right bike, or somebody sells you a dud of a phone, you're not running around trying to get that person fired. And so I think the same respect needs to be paid to NFL teams, college teams, whatever. It's like, yeah, they're going to have some bad games. They're going to make some bad decisions. You're not asking for the person that messed your Chipotle bowl up to be fired, so I think we need to have the same type of respect. And that's where I see it. I try to see the best in these programs. But in the end, I hope they do the same for me. If I have a bad broadcast, I don't want players going around tweeting like, oh my God, this dude sucks. Like he called so-and-so the wrong name for 7 minutes,
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I've been loyal to the Gophers. Nothing, I'm always loyal, period. But they've done a good job over the span. Yes, they've had those terrible dud years, but it hasn't been like 5 straight years. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing is, but we do have guys that are negative. We have some players that are former players that are negative about the program, and those guys are always going to be that. Like I choose to, spend my time with more positive things, because if you do too much negative, everything becomes negative.
Right.
Your life
Spiral.
becomes negative. Yeah. It's just it's contagious.
Right on.
Relentless positivity, man. I subscribe to that as well. What do you think about this upcoming year for football? I mean, is it officially like everyone's just playing conference schedule?
Yeah, some people are playing conference, some people aren't playing at all. Like UConn's out.
UConn's out, yeah.
The Big Ten only schedule, I think, is going to open their eyes up to this. Might be a way to do it, period. One, you're going to get a lot more money by playing 10 Big Ten games versus 8. That adds 2 more Big Ten games. That gives you a chance to play other teams in the other conference versus just your West guys, and then 1 crossover game. Or 2 crossover games. Now you get 4 crossovers.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the thing, is that could be a thing where maybe it's just 2 preseason games, kind of like the SEC. The SEC does it that way. They just play 2 non-conference, and then they knock each other out. And it's just, but you get better games. You get more opportunities to try to move up and down in the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Your strength of schedule goes up. I think it can be a good thing in the long run where the Big Ten adopts this model where it's 10 Big Ten games and then 2 non-conference games. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you can schedule these 2, like starting off with Michigan State, I think will show them like, hey, we don't have to start off with a cupcake. We can start off with Michigan State, and then maybe the next game be Tennessee State, and then turn around and play some more. And then the eighth game, like Alabama does every year, is
Chattanooga, right? Chattanooga, and then they play Auburn.
Yeah, and then they play Auburn, right? And so instead of going Iowa to Wisconsin, you go Iowa, then you play somebody easy, and then you go Wisconsin. So you use those as tune-ups, you use that as a chance to rest, and you spread out your non-conference. I think that could be another way too, because there's always teams like Appalachian State, like Tennessee Chattanooga, that are looking, Tulane, that are looking to fill some late season games because their conferences aren't as big, like the Mountain West and all those. They only have like 8 teams. So it's like, well, how do we, we can fill in games whenever. And I think that's going to be also an opportunity for them to understand that. I think it needs to be a Final Four as well for football for each conference, because right now it's kind of like the 2 that win, they just play. I would love to see 2 from the West and 2 from the East play each other again, and then they play that team,
Mm-hmm.
Or vice versa. You cross over. Okay, the best 2 from the East are going to play the best 2 from the West. We'll put them in the Final Four, and we'll figure it out, a champion. Because it might be Ohio State versus Michigan. It might be Ohio State versus Penn State, which is probably a better Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
If they are the true 2 top teams,
right?
Let's go back to that old format where it didn't matter, and then just say, let's get the best 2 teams in there. Right. I think that's another opportunity, because the West right now, in my opinion, is weaker than the East. Other than Penn. If you take Penn State and Ohio State out, is even. But those 2 are juggernauts, so they do deserve a chance to play each other. Because Ohio State blowing out Wisconsin, or Ohio State blowing out Iowa, is just, it's blah. Or blowing out Northwestern. Like, is it worth it? Like, it's not. It's boring.
Right.
Like, let's let them actually play the 2 best teams in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another opportunity. Like I said, this is I think it's just opening opportunities up for the commissioner, who's Kevin Warren, and the committee to say, okay, well, maybe this could be the way to go. This might be a better opportunity to make our conference better, like the SEC.
And Kevin Warren's the right guy for the job. Yeah. That man he's been around, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Kevin's a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really good guy.
That's awesome.
Do you think I've always subscribed to the idea that like the Power 5 conferences just need to play each other more in the beginning of the season, so you have a better gauge of the conference strength comparison. So like, you never really know how sometimes we like to talk, like Ohio State and Alabama will play at some point in the season, probably at the end of the year. and then at the end, after or before that, you'll have all the Outback Bowls and everything, and then you kind of have this unveiling of like, oh, I didn't realize that Vanderbilt was better than or kicked the shit out of someone, or Minnesota beating Auburn. There's I think those kind of games should be played as your preseason games. Get those like interconference, so you can get a kind of a better idea of what conferences, how the conferences stack up, so that when they play each other the rest of the year, you have a different gauge.
Yeah, kind of like basketball does, the ACC, Big Ten Championship, Challenge, or whatever. Yeah, I definitely think that every year you can pick a conference. And so if it's like this year, our two conferences will be, SEC, ACC. And so, and then the Big Ten, ACC, SEC pick. Like you don't just throw the Lions to the Wolves, or the Wolves to the Lions. You just kind of say, okay, who's your top? Okay, our top's Alabama. Okay, we're going to give you Ohio State early, where even if you lose, you're losing so early, you can run the table and still be back in the playoff.
Right.
Because I think that's always the nerve-wracking thought is like, okay, yeah, let's schedule USC. But if we lose USC, now we're screwed. Well, nope. If you lose like Alabama, they always lose early on, and then they run the table and they're back in the playoff by the end. And so I think, that needs to be done. And the committee needs to understand that when they're voting later in the year, this is why I think it's a good idea. But, like Minnesota could easily play Iowa State or Kansas, or, TCU or whatever, like they were trying to start to get done. But yeah, I think it does. I think it does need to be done where Oregon can come play Minnesota. Oregon State, I mean, we do schedule some of those, but instead of having like one of those and then three other poo butts or whatever you want to call them,
South Dakota States, St. Thomas's, maybe St. Thomas. St. Thomas could play Minnesota.
I would love St. Thomas to play Minnesota.
We could get the shit kicked out.
If you look at like North Dakota State, I think that's a good one.
That is a good one.
That's a good one.
I agree.
But yeah, I think some of these other ones can be done without, like Fresno State. That's a good one. That's a good team out there. They win their conference every year. Like I said, Oregon State being in the Pac-12, that's not a bad one. Even like a Stanford. But yeah, I think that like Ohio State for the most part tries to do it, but then you always have those other schools. Now the other issue though, and I do get this because you always have to look at both sides because I'm real big now in understanding the equity side of this. You got schools like Appalachian State that need the money,
right?
Yeah,
because when they go play Alabama, they pay them $600,000 to come down to Alabama and lose, or not lose, like give us a game, like go as hard as you can. We're going to kill you, hopefully, most likely, 77-0, like Florida State used to do.
Right.
But that is a financial. So whether it's like, hey, let's figure out a financial situation where the committees and the TV people can help some of these smaller schools with that money. But that's the other side. Because I know now this year, a lot of those schools are not happy because they're losing that game that like Minnesota was going to pay them $400,000 or Alabama was going to pay them $600,000 to, get them on the schedule. That's the other side of this is those schools, that's scholarships, that's actual scholarship dollars that they were hoping that,
or funding to other sports too.
Correct. Cause they're not making these big bowl games. And so it's like, well, if we're not going to make a big bowl game, how do we make up that supplemental income that we're not going to get that these other schools are getting, like Alabama, making $8 million for being in the playoff plus the championship, all that kind of stuff. Gophers, I think got $1 million to go to their bowl game. And so when you look at that happening and then you turn around in this other school, even though they went 7-5, they're not getting picked to play in a bowl game because they didn't get picked. That's when, they're like, okay, well, yeah, it'll be good to do this, but then how do we help these other schools that need the funding?
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Yeah. Similarly to that, especially with this upcoming season, like Rashad Bateman not choosing to opt out. What do you think I know he had a statement and everything on that, but the reasoning and the intention behind that, I mean, he's talking about preparing for the NFL draft next year and all that stuff, but I've seen a lot of different players opt out, even in the NFL for COVID stuff. But what do you think from the mindset of a senior year college football player getting ready for the NFL? Like, do you think that is like I mean, it's different for everybody, but what is kind of the mindset or the intention for that kind of decision?
Yeah, well, he's a junior, and so is Michael Parsons from Penn State, who like allegedly is going to opt out as well. When you look at guys like Rashad Bateman, you look at Michael Parsons, these are first-round picks.
Right.
And so you have to weigh the good and the bad. Like, if I could have come out early, would I have been a first-round pick? For those two, yeah. Michael Parsons wears number 11. Those usually 11's the guy at Penn State, just like 1 is the guy at Michigan. It's no reason to come back. If you could have come out anyway, why not just go ahead and say, all right, well, now I'm letting you guys know for sure I am playing. I am going to the league, because people didn't even know that. Like, will Rashad Bateman come back for a senior year? Like, you never know that. So now he's telling these GMs and scouts right now, I'm on your radar. So right away now Bateman's number one on the list for receivers, because all these other guys still have to play. He was top 5 last year.
Right. He had not much more to prove.
Correct. So now he's back on the list as number one. He has a speed. Micah Parsons, same thing. He's a big, fast, strong linebacker. A little undersized, but still kind of that speed move linebacker guy that they like in the middle.
Yeah.
And so guys like that are just thinking like, well, we don't know what's going to happen in the season. If I get COVID and I get really sick, and then all of a sudden my draft stock drops, what happens? If I get sick and scouts hear about it, does this hit me negatively because they say I went to a party and got sick? There's a lot of stuff. And then also, like, that's why the Big Ten players put that thing out on Uninterrupted, or I think it's either Uninterrupted or it's the Players Tribune, but the whole, like, I want to know. They just want to know from the Big Ten, what's your strategy? How do you keep us safe? The NFL has a plan, but it's kind of blah, but the NBA had a bubble. The NHL has a bubble. Soccer has a bubble. So that, I think that's what the players wanted to know, is like, what's going on? What's our situation with the bubble? Are we going to have anything?
Yeah.
And they had nothing for them. So I think that's it. And then the schedule, if you think about the schedule, that 10-game schedule didn't come out to after Rashad and Micah Parsons made their decision. So who knows if the schedule had come out 3 weeks ago, maybe he's like, okay, here's our 10-game season. I'm on.
Yeah, I want to play.
Yeah. When he made that decision, I think he's just sitting around, was like, well, the Big Ten hasn't told us what we're doing. Are we even having a season?
Right.
And so instead of waiting around and training with your team, knowing nobody knows, now you can go out there now and just focus and be an adult, work out, do what you got to do, and get ready, for the draft.
All right. Yeah.
Right on, man.
That makes sense.
It is 4:46, and I know you do have to get out.
Gotta get to the bank.
You got to get to the bank. We got a pair of back pocket core questions for you.
Okay.
First one is an average quality. And this is something you do well at times and other times not so well. We coin ourselves as two wildly average guys who have an extraordinary passion to have conversations with extraordinary people such as yourself. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to ask you, Ron, what is an average quality that you're working on to get better at a little bit every day?
Ooh, average quality. Wow. I don't know. Average quality. I mean, I guess golf. Golf would be my average. I'm average at golf, and I want to be good. I blame it on my clubs. Like, I'm working right now with Ping, trying to get new Ping clubs, and I'm hoping that's the issue. But I'd say that, like, I can't really think of the only other thing I could think of an average quality would be like my patience. Like, I'm not a patient person. I hold grudges. I'm a Gemini, so I get angry real easily. My dad did as well. And so I think that's where I got it from. So I do work at trying to have patience, trying to understand people where they're coming from, trying not to stay mad at people when I get mad. Because when I get mad at people, I'm done. Like, I can be done with you. I really don't care to be around you, especially if you did something that I just deemed as like completely BS. I have no problem writing people off, because in the end, I think it ends up making me better for not having that issue in my life anymore, because I'm not worried about that. So I'm working on that. I'm working on patience, forgiveness, just being able to listen to people, disagreements, like disagreeing with people and not being pissed off if we can't agree.
Sure.
Especially when I know I'm right. Like, that's hard. If I know for a fact.
Like on Twitter?
Oh, yeah. Like, I know I'm right.
You get pretty fired up on Twitter.
I try not to argue with idiots on Twitter about that, because people are just dumb and they don't think straight, And so, like, I'm working on that. Like, I got into an argument with a guy about the Packers game, and I'll never forget this. Got into an argument with a guy about the Packers Vikings game, because he tried to say the Packers took their foot off the gas. And I'm like, how'd they take their foot off the gas? And he's like, oh, well, they kept running, they went vanilla. And I'm like, vanilla? I'm like, they shifted. They were motioning in the second half. They were doing everything. I said, the Vikings actually just figured them out. Like, because they scored the first like 21 points and then didn't score again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the Vikings kind of shut them out defensively. And he was like, oh, that's because they just thought they had the game in the bag. I'm like, no, that's because the Vikings, Mike Zimmer's smart. And he made the adjustments. But I'm like, and I wasn't trying to be rude, but I'm like, if you're an athlete, you understand second half adjustments are a real thing. Once you see that motion twice and they go to bunch, and all of a sudden you're like, every time they go to bunch, one guy's running the corner, one guy runs a dig. Mm-hmm. Hey, just sit on the corner. He's coming your way.
Right.
And that's what happened. Like, Trey Waynes, instead of like coming up and bumping the bunch, Trey Waynes like, all right, let me play off and see what happens. Oh, wait, he's running the same damn route. He ran a corner and Trey Waynes breaks it up. Next time, what happens? Xavier Rhodes. All right, let me sit back and watch you run this dig route. Runs a dig route, tips it, interception. Why? Because I know now. I'm not playing bump because I just need to play bump and run. Because we know that's what Xavier Rhodes wants to do. He wants to just bump you because he's good at that.
Right, all hands.
He's 6'2", he's long arms, he wants to get his hands on you, but he's not good in space. Well, Zimmer said, hey, just sit back. Trust me. I got you guys. We're going to call bunch. And I watched the film. So I'm like, dude, I watched this. And so I'm petty. That night I set up, I waited for them to upload the film on to the network or whatever.
Yep.
I picked out like 50 plays. The 50 plays. I counted all 50 plays and I went through the first 25 versus the second 25. Gave the guy all the rundown numbers, even had some plays that I like recorded and said, hey, here's the route here's the same concept in the first half.
Yep.
Here's the same concept in the second half, same bunch motion. Watch the first half. He's wide open because he's playing bunch and he got picked. Second half, he backed off. There's no pick. So boom, you're there, break it up. Guy would not let it go. No. Vikings they just suck. And then the guy gets like mad at me and I'm like, dude, all right, man. I'm like, look, bro, I'm done. I'm like, first of all, you're disrespectful. You're this and this. And the guy tried to call me like unprofessional or something, whatever, and some other stuff. And that's why I was making a joke with people. Like, I'm going to start a podcast and just call it the Unprofessional Podcast. Because clearly, like, this guy thinks because I can call him out and say, you have no idea about football. And I wasn't trying to say it, but I'm like, at the end of the day, if you don't understand that motioning and shifting is not taking your foot off the pedal. Like, you don't motion and shift to take your foot off the when you take your foot off the pedal, you run 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, or 2 running backs, and you just run the ball.
Right.
Outside left, outside right, toss left, toss right, punt the ball. That's taking your foot off the pedal. Motioning and crisscrossing and trying to pick plays and do flea flickers, or not flea, but deep play action. I'm like, that's the defense kicking your ass in the second half. And so like that guy, which actually was funny, reached back out to me this year. Like, hey man, like, I'm sorry. Like, I saw what your daughters have been up to.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
You want to come on my podcast? Because he probably has a podcast too.
Like, I didn't mean what I said. Let's make up. And I was like, you know what? Like, I haven't responded to the guy yet. Because like some of the stuff he said, I felt like if I was a white guy, he wouldn't have said it.
Shit.
And so I was just like, I'll think about it. But I haven't said that to him. In my head, I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. Also, we've been on quarantine, so I'm like, there's no need for me to make up with you anyway because I can't see you anyway, so I don't care.
There you go.
Because I know I used to run into the guy. Like, I'll see him like at Vikings games, or I'll see him at the state fair, and so I know there's times we'll interact. But I'm just like, you know what? Like but that was the old me, so that's an average quality maybe. The patience. I have no time and patience for people that just don't want to listen and then take things personal. There's nothing to do with them. Like, there's nothing to do with you. Why are you taking this so personal? This is my job. Like, I watch film, I break it down. I actually sit down and do a film study with the Vikings. Like, I'm looking at this stuff. Like, I look at the other teams. I watch tendencies and I watch routes and I watch when he's lined up on this hash, it's always the same route, all that stuff. I'm like, don't be mad because I know this and you're just trying to make a point because you think and so, but that's what I'm working on. I'm working on that. That is one that I'm trying to be better at, having more patience with people.
Well, we'll help you out in the threads. we will fight the good fight on Twitter. We'll make sure you guys you are up to snuff there. We don't want you losing patience on that. So we'll actually read your replies for you, and clean that up for you. The other question,
final question
is what is in your back pocket? So when pressure turns to stress, anxieties rise, and you're in a tough spot, what kind of mental attribute or thing do you rely on to come out on top?
Yeah, honestly, I was gonna say, I thought you were about to say right now, like I have nothing in my pocket.
It's actually bad.
It's actually really bad to have stuff in your back pocket, like phones and all that. Not good.
Bad for your posture.
Yeah, I have sat on my phone before and bent it up. So yeah. So I do that. I do not do that. That's why I carry the fanny pack now.
Good man.
Yeah.
I got flamed for wearing that. I bought one in Thailand, a little crossbody. It's nice. It's convenient.
Mine's the Puma one, but I like it. Like it's my money's in there, my keys, I put my phone in there.
It's nice to not have to like put anything in your pockets.
Yeah, people always say that, like, what do you put in a fanny pack or a purse, as they want to call it, that you can't put in your pockets? I'm like, pockets, like these phones are huge now.
Right.
Like when my first phone was like that big, like it was like the size of like my palm. Now this thing's like the size of like, 2 palms side by side. So you put it in, and then, if even people with the bigger XL Max phones, you You can't just put those. I mean, I've seen dudes with skinny jeans and big phones in their pocket. They look stupid.
Yeah.
Like it looks dumb. Like, so get a fanny pack. You look at least normal with that. I mean, even if you wear like your dad, because I took it home to Detroit. My sister, the first thing she reminded me is like, your dad carried a fanny pack and used to make fun of him. I'm like, you know, you're right. Like he did. He wore the bike shorts because he was my baseball coach. He wore the bike shorts.
Oh
He
yeah.
had the fanny pack with the tight shirt, the long white socks. And so like that was him. That was his look. But I'm like, that was the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
And now like fanny packs are back. I'm like, yeah, it's perfect. Like when I went to the state fair last year, 2 years ago. No, last year. That was the first thing I wish I had. I'm like, man, I wish, because I was carrying a backpack.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I wish I had a fanny pack because then I could just have my money, my phone, the wallet. And then my kids always give me like little stuff that they want, whether it's lip gloss or chapstick or something.
Yep.
Like you can't put all that stuff in your pocket. Keys are the worst in your pocket.
Oh, the worst.
And
Moving
so,
around basketball shorts, they don't stand a chance.
Yeah, and it just looks like you're running and pants all loose. So now I do the fanny pack. But as far as what I keep in my back pocket at moments like that, honestly, I try to always go back to the Bible, because like I think about like stories in the Bible, things that like I can use in that. And honestly, the one big thing I always remember is one, I can do all things through Christ. And so what that means, and people always think it means like strength, power, whatever. If you want to take it that way, fine. But if you actually read the whole Philippians and what's really going on in that moment and why he says it, the whole quick Cliff Note story, is Paul writes a letter to the Philippians, and that's what that is. It's his letter about the Philippians that he's giving to the scribes to put in the Bible. He was just, hey, this is what happened to me when I went to Philippi. He had been talking about going to see these people, and he was praying to God, like, I want to go to Philippi. I want to, minister the gospel to them. Well, he ends up getting arrested, and that's how he ended up there, because he gets enslaved, arrested, blah, blah. When he's there, he's illegally detained, which we know that's real life now. People are illegally arrested all the time, wrongfully convicted. He's in jail. He can easily get out because back then jails were like rocks, and, you can kick your way out and get out, and, or, you always see the stories of, Helen of Troy and all those people like, coup d'etats and, tearing down the kings.
Right.
But he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to figure out why God has me here. I prayed about it. I'm here. Let me figure out what. He starts changing the hearts of all the guards. Those guards end up changing the heart of the king, and then he gets released and blah, blah. But I look at that in that moment, they're saying, hey, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. I mean, you're one of God's servants. You can have everything. You can be the richest person in the world, but then in that moment, you're arrested and you're nothing. You're a peasant. You have no money. They're treating you like crap. You're getting beaten. And he said in both instances, when I had a lot and I had nothing, I can still do it through Christ. And I know that. And for me, that's what I look at, because being an NFL draft pick, right out the gate, $2 million. It's like, what do I do with all this money? Right out the gate, they give you a check and you're like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm 21. I had never had money before like this, that much. And so I looked at that lifestyle and cars and TVs in my truck and, a Mercedes and Escalade and all this stuff that I didn't need at 21. A house, way too big for one person with 5 bedrooms. Why do I have that? But that's just what I did being in Detroit. And then fast forward to, getting hurt, not playing anymore, not understanding I needed a job, thinking I can live off, and it sounds, I would never say this because you can live off of it if you're smart. I just wasn't smart because I didn't understand. But like being able, no, you can't live off forever, but you can live good for a while off of $1 million. And like looking at $1 million, like, oh, okay, a couple $1 million. All right, I'll be good. But it's like, if you live a multi-million-dollar lifestyle, you can't. Like if you have 3 cars, if you have 2 houses, I had a house in Baltimore and a house here. I had my car. I was paying for my mom's car and my wife's car, or my girlfriend at the time, I was helping her out. I had 2 cell phones, all that stuff. Like I was just living a life that I didn't need. And so as I lost money and then had to, end up moving out of one house, selling a different house, losing that money because the market was, this back in 2007, 2008, when the world was going under, the market was terrible. Just had to sell my house for the loan. I just paid off the loan, but I didn't get any of my cash back that I had put down.
Wow.
So I'm losing like 150 grand there. And then you turn around and all the equity into the house, I, put the basement into it, other stuff. So that 25,000 was gone. And so you just look at it and you're like, okay, what do I do? So then we moved in with some friends, lived in somebody's basement for 6 months. And in that moment, I'm like, man, I'm living in somebody's basement. I'm a former football player. I have no like job. I don't know what I want to do. And I look back on that time and it was one of the most calming times. And so now when I go through anything or I'm thinking something's bad or I'm really just like, what do I do next? always remember that. Always go back to that. Like, you know what? Through Christ, I'm gonna be fine. You know, it's gonna suck. Maybe it's gonna be hard. It's gonna hurt. But I know God is still there. He's still good. You know, my soul is what's important, not what I have on earth. And I think that's the goal, because so many people think church and all that's about the relationship with the church and giving money to a church and all that stuff, because people get a bad name by doing that. I'm like, I don't do it for that reason. I do it because I have my own relationship with God and my own conversations with him directly. Like, I'm not going to a pastor expecting him to make me better, you know? And so when stuff happens, I just kind of go back to those tough times, because I'm like, look, I've been there and I've been here. And in the end, you know, like, God was always there. He hadn't changed, you know, even when people in the church treated me wrong or did stuff that I didn't like, you know, God was still there. And so no matter what I'm going through, no matter how pissed off I am, no matter what kind of argument I am, no matter, you know, what's going on in the world, no matter how much I struggle, I that's what's in my back pocket. I just kind of go back to that scripture and say, you know what? I've lived with a lot and I've lived with absolutely nothing. And through it all, I got through it. You know what I mean? I got through it. God was there for me. It took longer than I expected for some of these things. You know, like my credit at one point was a 561.
Whew.
Because I got my identity stolen when I was a kid. Didn't know. I'm finding out now. People in Detroit do this all the time, where people at hospitals are selling social security numbers and identities to scammers and getting paid for them. Only reason I found this out is this year, when the money was coming out for people to get money from the government, whatever stimulus.
Yeah.
People who had sold social security numbers to other people's kids, to other people, those checks were going to those people. So people were trying to figure out, like, where's my check for my kid? And they're like, oh, this person's been claiming your kid for like 10 years.
No way.
And they didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Some people knew and they just didn't think that they were going to lose out on the money. Right.
Yeah.
Some people didn't know. And so I had a mortgage when I was 2 that had nothing to do with my parents. I don't have a middle initial, so that was the other problem. So every Ronald Johnson a lot of times was popping up on my credit report. So I got a lot of that fixed with the FBI. But I had a credit card at the age of 4. Parents knew nothing about. 2 or 3 things were my parents, and they knew and they admitted they made a mistake. Got that fixed, had to pay those things off when I got to the NFL. But yeah, like, and then the other day just checked, and now I'm close to 800, you know, on my credit score. So even that, like, fighting that battle of, like, you know, having to put more money down than I should, having to, you know, look at cars that I really don't want to look at to buy because, you know, they're like, oh, well, you got to use your wife's social security number to get this car because your credit's all screwed up. And, you know, like all that stuff, like credit, you know, interest rates being higher than it should be. And so even getting that email the other day, like, hey, you know, your interest rate's going to be 2 and some change. I'm like, whoa, what? It's like, yeah, your credit is almost 800 now. And so just diligent working, not looking for a get rich quick scheme of like, oh, dude, I can fix your credit for $100 or whatever, $500, your credit will be, you know, whatever. I never trust those places because I'm like, why do I have to pay you to fix my credit? Like, what are you doing that I can't just go do it myself?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's where I'm like, let me just work on this myself. And over time, you know, just diligently paying stuff off and, you know, making sure my credit cards are paid down and making sure I'm not taking out too much money than I can afford to have, not buying a house that's too big for me anymore, all that kind of stuff. You know, we were literally just moving based off number of kids we had. You know, we started off in a single bedroom apartment, had a baby, moved to a 2-bedroom condo, had another baby, moved into a 4-bedroom house. You know, it's like, I'm not buying if I don't need it, you know? And so that's one of those things now where, you know, you sometimes you're like, oh man, I really do want to get that big house and I can extend this payment here and do that, but it's not worth it. So that's what I do when I struggle and think about stuff and I'm like, what's kind of in my ear, in my head, it's that I go back to Philippians and just kind of think about, you know, you can have a lot and God's there, you can have nothing and God's there. So just always know that in that situation, in that moment, if I'm racially profiled, if a cop pulls me over and, you know, is asking me, do I have any warrants out for my arrest? And, you know, I literally told a cop to Google me one time because he was asking me dumb questions. I'm like, just Google my name real quick and you'll see what I do. And, you know, after he did that, he's, oh, no, man, your car kind of looked like somebody else's. I'm like, oh, really? Did it? And asked him what kind of car it was. Looked nothing like my car. You know, but it's just, I was in a neighborhood in Chanhassen where I am the only black family and he didn't expect me to be there. You know, I was wondering, why am I driving 20 miles an hour? I'm like, there's kids all over this neighborhood. I live here. Oh, do you? I'm like, yep, I live right over there. Really? You know, and so, you know, it's just that. You know?
Yeah.
You know, because on Lake Susan, like I said, I never see black families. Maybe one other one. You know, and it's a mixed race family. So, you know, it's just when you're a black guy walking in a white neighborhood, oftentimes you get bothered or people look at you differently. So that's what
Yeah.
I try to. Now with the bracelet stuff though, everybody in the neighborhood knows us, so now it's a lot different look because it's like, oh hey, that's hey, how's the bracelets going? And but we've been there for 5 years. You guys never spoke to us,
Yeah,
So even
interesting.
that, it's just I keep that in the back of my mind all the time. Like we didn't have this support before, and maybe we didn't actively seek it. Like I don't knock on people's houses with cookies and cakes and because we do have a neighbor in our neighborhood. She does that. She brings us cookies all the time, and she did this before this. Like my wife met her like 4 years ago. Because our daughters are the same age. But yeah, she's that mom. She's in the neighborhood passing out cookies to people she knows, and I'm like, yeah, that's not me. Like I'm not passing out cookies to people. Or I'm not dropping off treats, and But I did say I do at some point want to drop off something to all my neighbors. I don't know what yet, but I do want to do something at some point, whether it's a Vikings thing or something or whatever. But yeah, that's what's in my back pocket though.
Awesome.
Dude,
That's
that was
phenomenal, Ryan.
Yeah, that's a hell of an answer, man. I love that.
And thanks for sharing like your hero's journey. The way you climb, the way that you have some pitfalls, and how you cut and you climb back.
Appreciate it.
That story alone that's in our back pocket now. That's in our listeners' back pocket. Thanks for giving us an hour and a half of your time on a Friday, short notice. This has been phenomenal, Ryan.
I'm supposed to be drinking by now.
I know.
Yeah,
we
dude.
should crack something
Well, yeah,
open.
we'll get you a White Claw or something on your way
I
out.
don't drink White Claw.
Whoa! Really?
No.
Why not?
No.
Why?
Have you seen the TikTok of the White Claw versus the beer and the whiskey guy?
No, I haven't.
No,
Just-
wow.
Just look it up.
Okay.
Just look up. Just put like White Claw TikTok. It's got to be in there somewhere. I forgot the guy's name, but yeah, it's funny. He does the whiskey drinker, the beer drinker, and then the White Claw drinker, and it's like 3 different ways how they sit down with their drink. So just
Oh yeah,
Oh,
no,
shit.
actually, it's something like this.
Yep,
yeah.
but it's like he has his shirt tied up and he crosses his leg like that. Yeah. I tried a White Claw once at a golf tournament and just didn't like it. It just has no
Okay.
taste to me. It's like water
Sure.
with food coloring,
Yeah.
like, or whatever, like a drop of cherry in it.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
So,
yeah.
I'll
respect.
give me a whiskey. That's what I drink.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's fair.
what's up, Ben Lieber's Douglas and Todd?
Douglas and Todd.
Yep. So I do Douglas and Todd. I
There
do
you
the
go.
Angels Envy. I'll do like Maker's Mark Special Edition.
Yep.
What's the new one I just tried? Whiskey Pig.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
Whistle Pig. Whistle
Pig.
Pig. One. Yes, it's a
Okay.
10-year-old. So it's in like a barrel thing. It's a 10-year. They have a 10-year and a 12-year-old one. But that one's like you don't bring that out for everybody. That's when you get a 10 and a 12. For like a little one, it's like $140. So you don't. That's not just show everybody.
Yeah, you don't show up with that to a podcast.
Yeah, no. That's one. Like the 10-year alone is like $90.
Oh, damn.
10-year, yeah. So
Oh,
it's,
shit.
so when I the only reason I got it the other day because it was on sale for like $70.
Good
But
man.
Still, it's like the small one. But it's good. It's smooth. It's good. Angel's Envy to me is kind of the better. I like that. That's the best. And then 1942 Forster, or
Okay.
no, 1920. So it's an old whiskey that's based off Prohibition. So it's 115 proof. So
Whoa.
you can light it on fire. So you put it in a shot glass, light it on fire. You can either drop it in a beer or just pour it over ice. So after you light it on fire, you smoke it.
Smoke. Yeah.
And then you pour it over the ice with the cherry and orange slice, a little bit of grenadine, and then like a splash of Sprite. It's good.
That's better than a White Claw.
Oh,
No shit. All right.
because I do the big ice cubes.
Yeah,
I got one of
yeah.
those frozen balls thing. I got my mother-in-law got it for me for
Dang.
Father's Day. So
Mm-hmm.
I do that. I do the big ice cube, put it in there, a little cherry, orange slice.
Yep.
And then you light it on fire, pour it over the ice. It's good.
Yeah. Doing
We
it
should
right.
start doing that around our 20-something-year-old friends with their White Claws. I think we'd make a dent.
Yeah.
Sick,
Rising up.
dude. All
Yeah.
right. Well, hey, thanks for spending some time with us, man. That was
Appreciate it.
amazing.
Appreciate it.
That's a wrap.
All right.